My sister-in-law texted my husband at 3 a.m. asking if he thinks about her. Now she wants to bring her new boyfriend to my baby shower. My husband and I met at a ski lodge 9 years ago. I was there with my young daughter and a friend. He was there with his siblings and some buddies. There was a singing competition that night, and our friends pushed us both to enter. We ended up doing a duet together, and I swear something just clicked between us. We talked for hours at the cafe afterward, and that's when I first noticed something was off with his sister Tina. She came storming over to our table and demanded he come back to their group. She didn't even glance at me. When he told her no, she ran off crying and stole her sister's room key card so they got locked out for the night. I thought it was strange but figured maybe she was just having a bad day. I was wrong. When we bought our house together and threw a housewarming party, Tina showed up dressed like she was going to a nightclub. She ignored me completely and spent the entire evening hanging off my husband. She kept bringing up childhood memories, kissing his cheek, hugging him, touching his arm whenever he said anything remotely funny. He looked so uncomfortable, but she didn't care. She walked around telling people he used to say he never wanted kids, yet here he was playing daddy to my daughter. One of my friends pulled me aside and said Tina had been going on about how attractive his old modeling photos were, and that her favorite picture was one of just the two of them from a family trip to Hawaii. Then she started telling people how weird it was that he was suddenly in love with a woman of color when he'd never dated one before. That part confused me because Tina herself is biracial, so why would that bother her unless she wished she was in my position? The night ended with my husband getting down on one knee and proposing to me in front of everyone. Tina burst into tears and ran to the bathroom. Their dad had to drive her home. My husband brushed it off as jealousy because she'd never had stable relationships herself, but I knew it was more than that. After that meltdown, she disappeared from our lives. She skipped our wedding, skipped our baby shower for our first child together, skipped every birthday party and family gathering we attended. I kept sending invitations because I knew she wouldn't show, and honestly, I preferred it that way. I heard she had some kind of breakdown and spent years in and out of treatment. I genuinely hope she got the help she needed, but I also don't want her anywhere near my family if she's still carrying whatever this obsession is. I'm pregnant again now, and my baby shower is at the end of this month. We're doing it early because I have a history of going into labor before my due date. My mother-in-law called to RSVP and casually mentioned that Tina would be riding with them and wanted to know if she could bring her new boyfriend. I was stunned. We hadn't seen this woman in years. I agreed because I hoped maybe she had finally worked through her issues. That hope lasted exactly 24 hours. At 3 in the morning, my husband's phone started blowing up with texts from Tina. She wrote paragraphs about how much she missed being close to him and how I had destroyed their relationship, which is insane because I've barely spoken 50 words to her in 9 years. She asked if he was truly happy with his life because he used to say he never wanted marriage or children. Then she asked if he ever thought about her during all this time. The final message was her asking if they could meet up alone before the shower to talk face to face. I asked my husband point blank if he knew his sister was in love with him. He shrugged and said he wouldn't doubt it. He told me that when she was 11, she asked if they could cuddle and kiss, and he told her no. He said her behavior had always been off, but with so many siblings around, he never paid it much attention. I told him I wanted her uninvited immediately. He said he wants to talk to his parents first to see what mental state she's in. I told him fine, but I'm not waiting around for his family to make excuses for her again. So I did something that's either going to fix this problem forever or blow up his entire family. The shower is in 6 days, and Tina has no idea what's coming. I woke up early the next morning with my stomach in knots. My husband had already left for work and the house felt too quiet. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and pulled up those screenshots of Tina's texts from last night. My hands shook as I attached them to a new email. I typed out everything as clearly as I could. I explained that Tina had sent inappropriate messages to my husband at 3 a.m. I said she asked if he thought about her and wanted to meet him alone. I wrote that I couldn't have someone at my baby shower who was crossing these kinds of boundaries with my husband. I kept reading it over and over, changing words, making sure it sounded firm, but not mean. After about 20 minutes, I just hit send before I could chicken out. My heart was racing, so hard I thought I might throw up. I tried to distract myself by folding baby clothes, but I kept checking my phone every 2 minutes. Around 10:30 it started. First my mother-in-law called. I answered and she was already crying before I even said hello. She kept saying she didn't understand why I was doing this right before the shower. She said Tina had been doing so much better and this was going to set her back. I tried to explain about the text, but she talked over me. Then my father-in-law grabbed the phone and his voice was cold and angry. He said I had ambushed them with this and that I should have talked to them first, instead of just sending an email out of nowhere. I told him I did talk to them, that my husband said he wanted to check with them about Tina's mental state, but apparently that conversation never happened. He said the text seemed harmless to him, and that siblings can miss each other without it being weird. I felt like I was losing my mind. How was asking if my husband thinks about her harmless? 2 of my husband's siblings called next. One of them said I was overreacting and that Tina probably just had too much to drink when she sent those messages. The other one said I was being cruel to someone who had struggled with mental health issues for years. Nobody seemed to care that she had asked my husband to meet her alone. Nobody seemed to care that she had spent 9 years making me feel crazy. I sat on the kitchen floor with my phone buzzing over and over. I didn't answer any more calls. I just let them go to voicemail and listened to the messages pile up. Most of them said the same things. That I was making a big deal out of nothing. That Tina deserved a chance. That I was being unfair. By the time my husband got home around 4, I was shaking. Not from being cold, but from pure anger. He walked in and found me sitting at the kitchen table with my arms wrapped around my pregnant belly. He asked what was wrong and I showed him my phone. 17 missed calls, 12 voicemail messages, all from his family, all attacking me for protecting our marriage. His face changed as he scrolled through the call log. He sat down across from me and asked what they said. I told him everything. I told him his mother cried and said I was setting Tina back. I told him his father called me an ambush artist. I told him his siblings said the texts were no big deal. He picked up his phone right there and called his parents. He put it on speaker so I could hear. His mother answered and started in immediately about how hurt Tina was going to be. My husband cut her off. His voice was steady and firm in a way I'd never heard before. He said the texts were absolutely not harmless. He said his sister had crossed a major line by asking to meet him alone and asking if he thought about her. He said he supported my decision completely, and that Tina was not welcome at our baby shower. His mother started crying again, but he didn't back down. He said they had enabled Tina's behavior for too long and it needed to stop. His father got on the line and tried to argue, but my husband just repeated that his decision was final. Then he hung up. We sat in silence for a minute. I started crying and he moved his chair next to mine and held my hand. He apologized for not handling this sooner. He said he should have called his parents himself instead of making me deal with it alone. I told him I was scared his whole family was going to hate me now. He said if they did, then that was their problem, not mine. That night around 9, his phone rang. It was Tina. He looked at me and I nodded. He answered and put it on speaker. Her voice came through high and shaky. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her at first. She said she just missed her brother and didn't mean anything weird by the texts. She said she thought they used to be close and she wanted that back. My husband started to respond, but she kept talking. She said she knew he wasn't happy with me. She said she had been waiting for him to realize his mistake and come back to where he belonged. My blood went cold. I stared at my husband and watched all the color drain from his face. She kept going. Her voice got faster and more intense. She said she had spent years imagining him leaving me. She said she pictured him showing up at her place and finally admitting that he married the wrong person. She said she knew he still thought about their childhood when things were simple, and it was just them. She said family understands family in ways that outsiders never can. She said she could give him the life he actually wanted if he would just open his eyes. My husband's hand was gripping the phone so hard his knuckles turned white. He told her she needed serious help. He said what she was describing wasn't normal, and that she needed to talk to a professional. Then he hung up. He sat there frozen for 20 minutes. He didn't move or speak. I didn't push him. I just sat next to him and waited. Finally, he looked at me and said he had no idea it was this bad. He said he knew she acted weird sometimes, but he thought it was just awkwardness or social problems. He said he never imagined she had been sitting around for 9 years fantasizing about him leaving me. I asked him if he was okay, and he said he didn't know. He said he felt sick thinking about all the family gatherings where she was probably watching us and imagining us breaking up. He said he felt stupid for not seeing it sooner. The next morning, my mother-in-law called back. Her voice sounded completely different. She wasn't crying or defensive anymore. She apologized for her reaction yesterday. She said after my husband hung up on them, they went to Tina's apartment to talk to her. She said they found a journal in her room. She said it was full of detailed entries about my husband, fantasies about him leaving me, plans for how she would comfort him after our divorce, page after page of obsessive thoughts about her own brother. My mother-in-law's voice cracked as she described reading it. She said she had no idea Tina's feelings had gotten this extreme. She said she was sorry for dismissing my concerns and making excuses for behavior that clearly wasn't okay. Then my father-in-law got on the phone. I had never heard him sound like this before. His voice was rough, like he had been crying. He said they were taking Tina to a psychiatric facility that day for evaluation. He said they should have done this years ago instead of hoping she would just grow out of it. He said he was sorry they let it get this far. He said he was sorry they made me feel like I was the problem when I was just trying to protect my family. I told him I appreciated the apology. He said they would keep us updated on what the doctors said. Elena came over that afternoon with coffee and pastries. She didn't ask a million questions. She just hugged me and let me cry. I told her I felt guilty for forcing this whole situation. I said maybe if I had just let Tina come to the shower with her fake boyfriend, none of this would have happened. Elena looked at me like I was crazy. She said protecting my family wasn't cruel even when it hurt people who needed help. She said Tina needed this intervention whether I had pushed for it or not. She reminded me that I didn't create Tina's problems. I just refused to pretend they didn't exist anymore. We sat on my couch for 2 hours while I cried and she rubbed my back and told me I did the right thing. 2 days before the shower, my husband's sister Peony called. I had only met her a few times at family events. Her voice was quiet and apologetic. She said she had been covering for Tina for years. She said she knew Tina's behavior toward my husband wasn't normal, but she felt sorry for her. She said she would tell other family members that Tina was just socially awkward or going through a hard time. She said she minimized what Tina did because she didn't want to believe her sister was that unwell. She apologized for making me feel crazy all these years. She said several siblings had talked and they wanted to come to the shower specifically to show they supported our marriage. She said they were done making excuses for Tina. I thanked her for calling. After we hung up, I felt lighter than I had in days. That evening, my husband and I sat together after our daughter went to bed. We talked through everything that had happened. He admitted he had known on some level that Tina's feelings weren't normal. He said he just didn't want to believe his family could be that messed up. He said it was easier to pretend she was just weird or jealous than to face the truth that his sister was in love with him. He thanked me for being strong enough to force everyone to face reality. He said he was grateful I loved him enough to protect our marriage even when it meant blowing up his family. I told him we were going to be okay. He put his hand on my belly and said he knew we would be. The day before the shower, my mother-in-law called again. Her voice sounded different this time. Calmer somehow. More settled. She told me they had gotten the full evaluation results back from the psychiatric facility. Tina had been officially diagnosed with something called obsessive love disorder. The doctors also mentioned another condition called limerence that had been fixated on my husband since she was a child. My mother-in-law explained it in medical terms she clearly didn't fully understand herself. She said the doctors told them this wasn't something that would just go away on its own. Tina needed intensive treatment, long-term therapy, possibly medication for the rest of her life. She said Tina would be staying at the facility for at least 6 months, maybe longer depending on how she responded to treatment. She wouldn't be coming to any family events for the foreseeable future. Not birthdays, not holidays, not our baby shower tomorrow. I felt this wave of relief wash over me that I almost felt guilty about. My mother-in-law must have sensed it because she quickly said she understood why I felt that way. She said she was grateful we had forced this situation because Tina might have hurt herself or someone else if it had gone on much longer. Then I remembered something. I asked about the boyfriend Tina was supposedly bringing to the shower. My mother-in-law went quiet for a second. Then she admitted there was no boyfriend. Tina had hired an actor from some website that connects people with fake dates for events. She paid him $300 to pretend to be her new romantic partner. The whole plan was designed to make my husband jealous, to make him finally notice her the way she wanted to be noticed. My mother-in-law's voice cracked when she said it. She apologized again for not seeing how bad things had gotten. She said they should have gotten Tina help years ago instead of making excuses. I told her I appreciated her honesty. We hung up and I just sat there staring at my phone for a while. My daughter came into the kitchen a few minutes later. She looked at my face and asked why everyone had been so upset lately. I struggled to find the right words. How do you explain mental illness and inappropriate feelings to a kid without scaring them or confusing them more? I told her that sometimes adults have feelings that aren't healthy, that those feelings can make them act in ways that hurt themselves and other people. I said that when that happens, they need special help from doctors who understand how feelings work. I told her that's what was happening with her Aunt Tina right now. She was getting help so she could feel better and be healthier. My daughter nodded like this made perfect sense to her. She asked if Tina would be okay eventually. I said I hoped so. She gave me a hug and went back to playing in her room. Kids have this amazing ability to just accept things and move on. I wished I could do the same. The morning of the shower, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Like someone had lifted a weight off my chest that I didn't even realize was there. My husband brought me breakfast in bed. Scrambled eggs and toast with orange juice. He sat on the edge of the bed while I ate and told me he was proud of how I handled everything. He said most people would have just let it slide to keep the peace. But I stood up for our marriage and our family even when his own relatives made it hard. He said that took real strength. I told him I just did what needed to be done. He kissed my forehead and said that's exactly why he married me. Elena showed up 2 hours before the shower to help with final setup. She had handled most of the decorations and food while I was dealing with all the family drama. The house looked beautiful. Pink and blue streamers everywhere. A table full of gifts already arriving from people who couldn't make it. Elena had ordered a cake that said congratulations in fancy letters. My husband's siblings started arriving right on time. The ones who came were warm and friendly. They hugged me, told me how happy they were for us. Several of them pulled me aside privately to thank me for doing what needed to be done with Tina. They said they had been worried about her for years but didn't know how to help. One of his sisters said she was relieved someone finally forced the family to face reality instead of pretending everything was fine. The shower itself was exactly what I needed. Friends laughing and playing silly games. People guessing the baby's weight and due date. My daughter running around with the other kids. For a few hours, I forgot about all the stress and drama. I just enjoyed being surrounded by people who cared about us. Then my mother-in-law pulled me aside into the hallway. She looked me in the eye and gave me a genuine apology. Not the defensive kind from before. A real one. She said watching Tina's complete breakdown made her realize how much damage their enabling had caused over the years. She said she was grateful I loved her son enough to protect him even from his own family. She said that took courage she wasn't sure she would have had in my position. I told her I understood how hard it must be to accept that your child needs serious help. She nodded and wiped her eyes. Then she hugged me tight and thanked me again. One of my husband's brothers stood up to make a toast later in the afternoon. He raised his glass and said something about how strong marriages face challenges together and come out better on the other side. He talked about how proud he was of his brother for building such a solid family. I caught my husband's eye across the room during the speech. We shared this look that said everything about what we had been through together. All the stress and confrontation and difficult conversations. But we had survived it. We had protected what mattered most. After the guests left, my husband and I sat on the couch surrounded by piles of baby gifts. Tiny clothes and blankets and toys everywhere. He put his hand on my belly and felt the baby kick. He said he was glad our kids would grow up in a home where we face problems directly, instead of pretending everything's fine when it isn't. He said he wanted them to learn that sometimes love means having hard conversations and setting boundaries even when it hurts. I agreed completely. Over the next few weeks, his family kept us updated on Tina's progress. She was apparently responding well to the therapy and medication. Her doctor said with continued treatment, she might eventually be able to have supervised contact with family members. But never alone with my husband. That boundary would need to stay in place permanently. I felt relieved hearing that. My mother-in-law also told me she and my father-in-law had started family therapy together. They were working through their guilt about not getting Tina help sooner. She said the sessions were painful but necessary. She was learning to set boundaries instead of enabling unhealthy behavior. She said the therapist told them they had done Tina a disservice by making excuses for her all those years. That real love sometimes means letting people face consequences so they can get the help they actually need. I went into labor 3 weeks after the shower, right on schedule with my history of early deliveries. The contractions started around midnight, and by 3 in the morning we were at the hospital. My husband stayed calm the whole time, holding my hand through each wave of pain and reminding me to breathe when I forgot. He wiped my forehead with a cool cloth and told me I was doing great even when I was pretty sure I wasn't. The nurses kept checking on us and monitoring the baby's heartbeat. Everything looked good, they said. Strong and steady. When our son finally arrived 6 hours later, tiny and perfect and screaming his lungs out, I felt this huge weight lift off my shoulders. All the stress and drama from the past few weeks just melted away in that moment. My husband cut the umbilical cord with shaking hands, and then they placed our baby on my chest. His skin was warm and soft, and he had this thick dark hair that stuck up everywhere. I looked at my husband and saw tears running down his face. He kissed my forehead and whispered that he loved me, that we did it, that our family was complete now. The hospital room filled up with visitors over the next couple days. My husband's siblings came with balloons and stuffed animals and gift bags full of baby clothes. They took turns holding their new nephew and making silly faces to try to get him to smile even though he was way too young for that. His sister held the baby carefully, supporting his head just right, and looked up at me with this serious expression. She told me she was glad her brother married someone strong enough to stand up for what's right even when it's hard. She said watching me handle the situation with Tina made her realize she needed to be braver in her own life. I thanked her and felt this warmth spread through my chest. His other siblings nodded in agreement and said similar things about respecting how I protected our family. They apologized again for not taking things seriously sooner, for making excuses when they should have spoken up. My mother-in-law stayed the longest, rocking the baby while I tried to get some sleep. She hummed old lullabies and looked so peaceful holding her grandson. A month passed in a blur of sleepless nights and endless diaper changes. Our son had his days and nights mixed up for the first few weeks, which meant neither of us got much rest. My daughter adjusted to being a big sister pretty well, though she got jealous sometimes when the baby took up all our attention. We settled into a routine slowly. Then one afternoon, the mail came and there was a thick envelope with a return address I didn't recognize. Inside was a letter on official letterhead from a therapist's office. It included a note explaining that Tina had given permission for this to be sent to us. My hands shook a little as I unfolded the pages. Tina's letter was handwritten in neat, careful script. She wrote that she wanted to apologize for everything she had done over the years. She said her behavior toward my husband was wrong and harmful, and she took full responsibility for it. She talked about the treatment she was getting, and how much it was helping her understand herself better. She said she hoped that someday we might allow her to meet her nephew under supervision, but she would understand completely if we never wanted that. She wasn't asking for forgiveness, she said. Just wanted us to know she was working on herself and trying to become a better person. The letter felt genuine in a way nothing from Tina ever had before. My husband came home from work and found me sitting at the kitchen table with the letter spread out in front of me. He read it twice without saying anything. Then he sat down across from me and we just looked at each other for a long minute. We talked about what supervised visits would look like, how long we should wait before even considering it, whether Tina completing her treatment program would be enough, or if we needed more proof of real change. We both agreed that a year of stability was the minimum, maybe longer. Our son deserved to grow up in a home where everyone around him was healthy and safe, where boundaries meant something and got respected. We weren't going to rush into anything just because Tina wrote a nice letter, but we also weren't going to slam the door completely shut on the possibility of her being part of our lives eventually. My husband put his hand over mine on the table. He said he was proud of us for building our family on honesty and healthy boundaries instead of pretending problems didn't exist. I squeezed his hand back and felt this deep sense of peace settle over me. We had done the right thing even though it hurt people we cared about. We had protected what mattered most. And now we could move forward knowing our family was strong enough to handle whatever came next.